Welcome to NOFO Studios. Today we have Vin, Anthony, and Ron with us. And Vin, what are we going to talk about today?
Oh boy, today we're going to talk about two local wineries, one in Riverhead Town and one in Southold. We're going to start with Ron Goerler, Jamesport Vineyards. Ron, we'd like to know what you need to do to be a successful vineyard wine tasting room on the North Fork.
Well, thank you for having us here on the NOFO show. I think the most important part is having a passion for what it is you want to do. I think that's what wine is. Wine is passion. It takes people, obviously, to manage a business successfully. And also in the vineyard, you need the proper people to help you execute that plan that you have in trying to produce the varieties or the types of wine that you want. And I think that's always the challenge when you start an area. We came out here in 1980. We knew nothing. That was the challenge, right? We planted grapes and we watched things grow. We'd come out on the weekends. We'd watch the weeds grow. We'd come back the next weekend. The weeds would be taller. And it kept going on. And then we realized we had to be dedicated to the business in order to succeed.
And to the weeds.
And to the weeds.
Otherwise, they keep growing.
Yeah, the weeds don't stop. That's the funny thing. But, we didn't really know anything about farming. And so we learned that it was a lot of work. And it took a lot of effort to get grapes to the point where they could be harvested and then processed. And so I think that's really what the next step for us was. We didn't have a winery. So we had to start to learn how to build a winery. We bought things in auctions. We slowly got into the winemaking process. We were directed by people that we thought knew what they were doing, but realized that they were just consultants that were coming up with ideas on how we should operate. And then finally, I just decided myself. I was 17 years old. I went to Europe with my dad, and I told him, as I was sitting in Burgundy with him, this is what I want to do with my life.
Oh, wow.
I didn't go to school for it. It was not something I had a passion for. Was going to school. I was a hardworking type of guy, and that's what this business is. It takes a lot of hard work.
You did go to school for it, the School of Reality.
Yes.
School of Hard Knocks.
Yeah, School of Hard Knocks. That's what I tell my kids all the time. They all went to college and everything, but your dad went to Hard Knocks, and that's the only way you really do learn. The books are only going to teach you so much how to grow a vine or how to prune it or how to make the bottle of wine. It's really the practical that you need all the time.
Yeah.
And don't forget that passion.
Yes, the passion
don't
is
have
what
it,
really.
we're not moving.
No.
Anthony, tell us about your operation. What brought you out here? What you have to do to be successful?
Similar passion, really important. When we came out, it was a complete lifestyle change. I was a general contractor since 1989. My company still exists. I never shut down my license or my insurance. But
That's the Italian in you.
That's it.
There's always another job.
Thought
There's
maybe
always
one of
another
my
job.
kids would be interested after so many years.
We can hope.
It's there. It's there. But it was a great tool having that and the creativity of like creating things on the construction end brought my creativity into the wine. Like just a spin on who I am. But it was a good lifestyle change. We left Western Suffolk, inched our way out, lived in Manorville for about 8 years, and then we continued on until we bought the vineyard in Cutchogue. And then we gave this vineyard a purpose. That's when we designed our Vine to Wine school and had people harvest and create wine with us. And again, that evolution brought us right to the tasting room we have now. My tool as a contractor, we built a brand new facility. It's state of the art. Materials and methods are unique. So we're psyched. We brought it from zero to where we are. It's great sitting here with Ron because I've had a mentor since I came. Your career, Ron, started a lot earlier than me, so your challenges were definitely different than.
We didn't have anybody to lean on. There was only a handful of us, 5 or 6 of us.
So I totally appreciate being on your coattails because you could see there was a lot of stuff learned over the years that we're able to take advantage of. But very, very, very cool. So I'm not sure. Where we take it from there is today and our current challenges and how to be successful is, we need to drive our marketing and make sure people understand who we are, our product, keeping it sound, keeping it, interesting, keeping the vibe interesting at the tasting room. So there are a lot of different components to it, and it is a challenging type of business. It's not definitely not for the lighthearted type of person. You know,
Right.
there are
Definitely
too
have
many
to have a strong
components.
stomach.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So during the season, which we're coming into now, is when the influx comes. We see the buses, right? This is when we start seeing everyone coming, which is so important to support the businesses, right? I mean, because that's
Yeah, it's
part of the
simultaneous with the growth of the vineyard, because now you're talking about agriculture. There's a lot of work that's going. The inputs that we have to be challenged with, Mother Nature, the speed at which the vines are growing, and the maintenance behind it. And then, like you're saying, simultaneously, this is when our visitors come out. And if it wasn't for our visitors, then
What are
it's
you doing
not.
it for?
Yeah, we're not bringing food. We're not bringing product to market like
right.
traditional row crop farming. When they used to harvest potatoes, they drive them into a market somewhere, drive them
Right.
to the city.
there
or
was
whatever.
a buyer. There was a buyer waiting.
Yeah, we have a value-added product. We actually go the next step and we bottle it. We go from the raw product to the next step, which is processing it and creating the product, which essentially is the evolution of farming out here.
Retail.
Yeah, it's the retail component.
It's the most difficult part. It really is. Retail is,
Yeah,
I would
it's
say,
difficult.
definitely the most challenging because you have to have people, you have to have a facility,
You have
to have a place in where you can tell your story, and that's what wine is. It's a story. You're putting something in a bottle that you've taken the time to grow and to baby and nurture, and then you put it in the bottle and you hope that people enjoy what you've done.
Right.
I remember
I love that, man. I want to drink right now.
that's
That's awesome. Yeah,
we're
it's got a
Sannino
bottle right
Vineyards.
now.
Right, we're
That
talking
was
about
beautiful.
the artistic part, right?
Yeah.
That's where the art comes in. That's where, your passion and how you create is totally different than mine. And when people are always like, oh, there's too many wineries, there's too much competition. There's no competition.
there's no
It's
competition.
all
There's
individual.
so many ways to create our product. I mean, Merlot is grown throughout the world. In every single prominent wine region, you have Merlot.
Right.
But yet, there's enough Merlot being sold in the world, and they're all different. It's his expression, it's my expression, and then again, it's the story we're telling to the consumer.
Yeah, I love the story part that you guys are saying because you're right. There's so many vineyards, there's so many of similar products, but it's not similar. And the time you put into it, the effort you put into it, the way you grow, the way you nurture it once it comes out.
Wine is a living beverage. It takes people to grow it. It takes people to produce it. It takes people to enjoy it. But most importantly, it takes people to consume it. And if we don't have the consumer, that's where we, have the trouble is because, COVID taught us one thing that, people like to drink. We also-
Taught us a lot of different things, but that was a real significant one.
And I think that's really where our business models all changed out here on the North Fork was that we had a captured audience that was coming out here, and they were coming out here in large droves. They had found us. They knew the area existed, but yet we had to adapt to what they wanted.
Right.
And it taught me how to change my business model. Completely changed after COVID. The way we handle people, the way we service them, all reservation, all you want to be here for that hour and a half, and then we want you to go on to the next place and enjoy. And so it really was an eye opener for me when that happened, and I've never stopped doing that ever since.
Yeah, we definitely pivoted, right?
Yes, you had to pivot.
Have to pivot. I'd like to say that, Anthony, you had Ron as a mentor, and when I came into the industry as a helper of sorts, I had both of you guys to help me out. And from lending a gondola, when you saw me running grapes with one gondola, how many acres were we harvested? And you were
Couple
like,
hundred. I'm like,
what are you doing, right? You take your tractor, go to that barn,
Yeah.
go pick up that gondola, and you can thank me later,
Yeah.
right?
Right.
Without that mentality of farmers helping farmers, we're not going to survive out here. Without selling retail, we're not going to survive out here. And that's why I'd like you guys, why I'm so happy you guys decided to come on the show to tell your story. There is something coming on the horizon that I fear may hinder the wine industry, and that would be, and although it's a very sensitive subject because I could see the other side of this, but when that overtime threshold for the agricultural worker starts sliding down from 60 hours to 40 hours, where the vineyard worker is already working 70 hours, where does that put you guys?
Well, it puts us in a challenging spot, obviously, because I have 8 men that work for me, and so we run 65-hour work weeks, and so it's a payroll situation, obviously.
It's almost a double payroll now once you add those hours together.
Yes, and so their thinking is that just add more people.
Yeah, it doesn't work that way.
It doesn't work
right?
that way, and I get it. The payroll tax part of it, I get it. The more taxes, for the state's budget, but not for us. So I think that's going to be the real hard thing: is do we shrink our businesses a little bit to handle that change, or do you just say this is what I can do and this is all I'm gonna do?
Yeah, I think our products have reached a threshold where we're maxing out on what our product's valued at. So
Right.
to compensate for extra labor costs is not going to happen by
doesn't
just
work.
putting $1 on a bottle or something.
Especially when it's sitting on a shelf somewhere next to a similar aged bottle of same variety that's selling
Different
for
region.
$8, $12, $17.
Yeah.
I'm thinking our local bottle is going to be in the range of $50, $55 once we hit that.
And
Payroll.
that's the hard part here: is where is the threshold? I mean, I know what my costs are.
Right.
They keep going up.
Yep.
My accountant just told me yesterday that you're even with last year, meaning, which I was happy because
Good.
I'm not losing money.
Yeah.
But he did say your payroll went up $28,000.
So you're not even.
So I'm not even,
Right.
meaning I have, but I'm even in the sense that I'm keeping up with
Correct.
the current,
Right.
needs. But the payrolls went up $28,000 in 1 year. Not so and that wasn't due like I put.
And that was just a small slippage from 60 to what, 50 something?
Well, it's
It's
because
at 50 now.
50.
Yeah, they're
but everybody wants more.
Correct.
And so you want the good people that you have, and you want to keep them happy because they have to live and eat and pay rent and
right.
and-
But the
and-
dynamics are more profound when you're neighboring a state that doesn't have this implemented.
Yeah.
So now these farms that are right on the edge of our borders and don't have that, we're competing against a neighboring state now. So that gets really tricky. And then it's not just, our crop. You have to think of all the row crop farmers and,
Right.
and I don't,
dairy farmers. all of
Agriculture
them.
on a whole is
Yeah.
hurting.
Yeah, absolutely. For New York State's going to kill a lot of farmers with what they're doing.
The writing is almost on the wall for a lot of us at that point. I mean, I'll be aging out at 64 years old when that happens. When that hits that 40-year-old threshold. So I say to myself,
It's retirement.
it's retirement. But if my kids don't want it, then I say, why am I doing this?
Right.
Right.
And so then you have to try and sell it to somebody, and that's a whole nother dynamic
Right.
because they're going to buy the same thing that you're saying, I don't want to do this anymore
Correct.
for. So it's
And now with this show, they're going to know.
Millions and millions of people are going to be watching and saying, "Oh my God!"
If millions of people watch this show, Ron, I will buy Jamesport Vineyards.
it's on camera.
That's it. Locked and loaded, guys. Locked and loaded.
All right, so now the flip side, right? I wasn't a vineyard owner, but I worked for a vineyard operation. I oversaw a lot of acres. I don't believe I was paid what I should have been paid. And probably a lot of your workers feel the same way. But without this business model and what you could sell that product for, there would be no job. So I think we have to evolve. We have to allow the vineyard owners and operators and wine growers and winemakers the room to sell their product on the farm with the story, with the romance of it.
Yeah.
We
Touch
need
the
our,
dirt.
We need our town boards to get behind the farmers where I feel that they could do a lot better at that.
We came out here in 1980, and the potato farming was going down. A lot of guys had taken out loans and had gone under. There used to be 50,000 acres out on the North Fork. I don't even know if there's less than 200 acres left growing potatoes. I don't even think that's a number anymore. I mean, Marty is the only guy that I know that's growing potatoes anymore. All the
And
big,
full retail operation is the only reason keeping them there.
yeah, keeping them there. And so I've seen the evolution, the change. We only have 3,000 acres. I don't even know if that's a real number anymore on the North Fork. There's a lot of vineyards that have been pulled out. And so, if there's not something that's going to keep somebody from wanting to farm here, the next generation,
Right.
that's where you're going to see huge changes because of the costs and because of the things that, Anthony's fortunate he has children that want to be in the business.
Yes.
I'm unfortunate. I do have some wonderful children, but they just don't want to be a part of the business.
Well, you never
It's-
know. They might come around.
They might come
You don't
around.
know.
Let's
but,
hope
but I
one
say
day.
I'll be 64, and at that point, they've not learned the business. I learned the business from 17 up, right? So I
Right.
learned over the last 40 years what to
You
do.
are the business.
Yeah. and that's and that's hard to do. That's hard to teach a child. That's hard to teach somebody that.
Yeah.
And I was right by my father, learning every aspect, whether it was the financial, the physical, the mental. I mean, I think that's a lot of it. What people don't understand. Anthony and I were talking a little bit today about the mental challenges that we have every day. And you get up and you worry about the money, but you're more worried about the crop. You're more worried about the people. You're more worried about the machinery that doesn't work when it's supposed to work. I mean, it's
There's always something.
It's flat tires. It's broken spraying. There's tons of things that go on.
Can't get parts.
Yeah.
Nothing easy in farming. Everything is big. Everything is heavy. Everything doesn't work.
Yeah.
And
No, it's funny. I didn't mention I'm actually on the Southold Town Ag Advisory Board. So these are things that we talk about. How can local government support the farmer? And then we get into land preservation, and we're selling development rights on properties. But on the farming side, hey, look, what is it that we can do to make sure that the farmer can actually be sustainable and get into the next generation? If our kids do take it over, are we overly restricting the farm when we sell development rights? What are we selling? That's a question we're always asking at Ag Advisory. If the town's putting up money for a development right, we're always asking them, what exactly are you buying? Like, is it the right to build homes and that's it? Well, they never really give you a straight answer because
very
Because,
vague.
it would be nice on your farm if you could build housing for your staff. And that would,
labor housing has come up, but I don't even know if that's right because
you did sell the rights.
If you sold the right
Right.
to build residential structures, does labor housing have a certain different definition when you construct it? Is it, health department approved differently? Is it, just labor housing and it can't go to the farmer's family? So, yeah, that's a question. It's a great question. But at minimum, if you're only buying the ability to build homes on it, then everything else should be included on the farm for the farmer to do, right? If I can sell retail on it, if I can, do a U-pick or
Park
you
cars.
name it, if I can put up a deer fence, if I can park cars on it, these
You could
are
have
things
hundreds
that
of people walking all over the farm. I
Yeah,
mean,
right.
it's just-
This
it's
is
on
what
and on.
Well, that's
generate
what you need.
right.
You need this to be able to
Sadly.
generate income.
Right.
Correct.
Can we sell retail? A lot of this stuff is not permitted
Right.
now. They develop an easement and they buy your development right. And a lot of this stuff is outlined in an easement. Unfortunately, a lot of the farmers that are selling development rights are aging out. They're literally past retirement and they're saying, you know what, I can grab a chunk of change and live on my property.
But that'll
So if
run
I-
out.
Right, and they
It always
won't run
does.
out. They'll have enough money. They can live on that property. So when they sign off on the easement, they really don't care. They're like, all right, I sold more than I wanted to sell, but I can live on my property and I can retire here.
And that's all well and good. And I'm glad both of you guys said this already. You have heirs that want to stay in the business, and Ron, as of now, you don't, right?
Yep.
So when that land sells, and now you're operating, presently you bought your farm in the 80s, so right, your land value is X.
Yes.
Anthony, your land value is higher than Ron's land value.
Anthony just bought a piece of property,
Right.
so it's
So significantly higher, right? So in any business model, your cost of doing business, you have to factor in for sustainability, right? So Ron, you're a little bit more fortunate. Your land value, you paid less and it's worth a lot more. Anthony, you paid more and it's still going to be worth a lot more. But when, let's say, Ron, you're ready to go, not die, retire, and now you sell your land and you have all these vines, right? And if you sold your development rights, now the new farmer is challenged with a greater task than Anthony presently has, because that land value is going to be that much more.
Yeah, it becomes
So-
a difficult formula.
We need, honestly, I feel we need to adapt the language in the easements, whether to be edited, change it, delete it. That's a discussion for greater minds than mine. But if we don't do that now, agriculture is grim. The future of agriculture is grim.
I think it's going to be very difficult. All this land has been sold off, right? And Anthony and I were talking a little bit today at lunch. Who is going to farm it, right?
Right.
If the farmer, if you sell all the development rights and you can't build a house or a barn on there,
What are we doing?
Why would that person want to come to that piece of
Well,
land?
here's the take. Ron and I brought this up because I got a perspective from somebody else. So we at Ag Advisory encourage leaving a cutout for the farmer, so that if you're going to sell your development rights, make sure the farmer has a place to build their house
And retire on it.
Right, and if they're overly restricted and they can't put a barn here or there, at least in the cutout, put your barn, put your processing building, allow for all these things that you don't want them to have on the farm. So we've got to kind of mitigate that. But then there's a different mindset, because if they leave the cutout, their vision is what happened on the South Fork, is that these wealthy people buy it and then they have this gigantic 20-acre sod front lawn, and they have the house. So some of the people that want to sell development rights say, don't leave any cutout. There won't be any, big mansion
But who farms
with a
it?
sod farm.
Who farms?
But
Nobody.
But nobody's farming it. But
so you lose agriculture.
Right, but so if there's no margin now in agriculture,
Very little.
very little, very small. Now, when you buy a property, we talked about as of right in the previous show, and you pay a premium for it. The next person's going to say, well, how do I make money? So then who's going to be the buyers of this land?
There will be no one. It'll be overgrown. It'll be just like driving on the North Shore, where you can be on these wide open country roads, and all you have are trees lined for as far as the eye can see. But that's not the character of the North Fork.
Well,
The character of
we
North Fork
purchased-
is open.
When we purchased our vineyard, our original vineyard, we could see Route 48, which is a quarter mile from our house. And the property in front of us just grew in 18 years. There were gigantic trees. You can't see anything.
Right.
It's a forest. So if nobody's farming, we're looking at woodland. We're not looking at open space. So people say preserve it for open space even, right? Or parkland. But parkland becomes woodland if it's not maintained. So huge challenge, trying to figure out, do you leave that cutout and the wealthy person buys it and has a big lawn, or don't leave the cutout and leave no opportunity for the farmer to farm? So
Well, it's a
either
problem.
way, it's a struggle, it's a challenge, but
It's an exit plan being proposed to people that maybe don't understand all their options in a way too. A farmer is looking to get out and retire, and they think this is a good option because they're preserving the North Fork in one way, which they are. But in another way, like you said, they're not carving out 5 homes on that 60 acres for their kids to say, okay, in perpetuity, I'm going to preserve this and my kids can build a house as part of this agreement. They're just getting 1 house, 2 acres to build a house. So you sold off 100 acres. You know what I mean? Like if you think about it, if you said, okay, I'm going to build 5 houses. I want 5 houses carved out for my grandkids. And you know what? They might never build it for 30 more years, but I'm giving
leave
this
the
up
option.
today.
Yeah, leave
right,
the
give them the
in
option.
my opinion, I'm with you. Leave the option at least.
Leave the
because
option,
Then it's a viable farm if they're going to live on the
bloodline.
property.
Keep the
it's-
bloodline on the
yeah,
property.
but it's easier to farm if you live on the property. But
Sure is.
We just purchased a part, and recently the development rights were sold on it, but there was no cutout. I was shocked. Why wouldn't they leave a cutout? Because
They almost didn't let him put a well.
yeah,
well.
no. Well, it's not that they didn't let me. They have.
I'd
their
like to hear the story.
They have a process of how do you get things done? You have to go. You sold your development rights. I didn't sell them. I purchased it with the
Right.
rights sold. But then now the farmer needs the well. Now I've got to go meet with the committee that purchased and made that agreement. Farmers don't need to jump through hurdles. We need to.
You don't
we
have
need to
enough
do it.
time to jump through
No,
those hurdles.
we
You guys
just-
have the hardest job out here.
And if I say it, they accommodated me, but I am
On the Ag Advisory Committee.
So-
If they don't accommodate you,
Yeah.
what are you
Right,
doing?
These are the things
But
that
if you
we've
don't
been
know the
arguing
language,
about.
Correct.
You
so
need to know
they-
the
you
language.
know.
I mean, we just sold development rights. We're in the process, actually.
Yep.
And we carved out a 3-acre lot on a piece of property. And the thinking is so that somebody could do something. You could do a 1-acre carve out, a 2-acre carve, 3, 4, 5, whatever you want. But the reality is 3 acres is big enough for barns and processing and having the
But
ability.
theoretically, you could put a barn anywhere on that property.
Yes, an agricultural structure, yes.
Exactly.
Yes. But a processing, you need the
Oh
carve
yeah,
out.
processing
You
is
need-
not part of these current easements. We're
but a
not allowed to
necessity
process.
to an agricultural operation.
Right, and this is what we're trying to change. Let's get processing as of right. Farmers, certain things farmers do are normal.
Right.
Back in the day, a farmer would raise pigs and then process the pig and then sell it to wherever. Like all of this was included in farming. We lived on the property. We
It was your
bring our
livelihood.
crop in. We process the whatever, put it in packaging, and then we sell it.
I like to buy food from
Right.
somebody that I know the family that's growing it eats it.
Right?
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean,
Know your
know,
food.
Like, you know,
we have a beautiful
we have great farms out here already doing it. You know,
Eight Hands Farm right down the road from me.
Oh, I
It's,
love it.
Yep,
Oh,
they
it's
do
the
a great
best.
job, and at least you know when you get the meat there, or the chicken or the eggs.
It came from there.
came from there. You don't know that it's full of anything else.
Right.
There's and I
They
think
do a
that-
beautiful job. I love pulling up there.
Yep.
Yeah.
But they get a premium for what they do. So that's the reality. The farmer has to get the premium
And
for what he does.
and deserve it. You know what I mean? Like you go to a high end restaurant, you pay for the food, you eat
Right.
well, you don't mind. You know.
Well, you could take, let's say you're growing zucchini, right? Let's say you're growing a zucchini. You could take a whole bushel of that zucchini, you take it into Hunts Point, and you sell it for $80 a case, or a ton, a pound, whatever the commodities rate is today, right? You can take that one zucchini off your farm, prepare it in your kitchen, and sell it for $9. So think about a whole carton of zucchini for $80, where you could take one zucchini and sell it for $9, $18, $27, $36 if you did 4 jobs.
Because
four jars.
you're taking it to the next
You
level.
have to take
It's
it to
the
the next level.
value-added product. That's what we're talking
Need
about.
the processing.
The wine, we take it, we create its value-added. At that point, you want to be able to get more value for your crop.
Right.
And that's hard to do unless you have the capabilities of retail.
And we don't have that, right? And what can we do? What steps do we take now to get people to understand that this is what needs to take place? Because the people who bought their houses that are adjacent to vineyards and farms, and they did so because of the location,
Location, yeah.
right?
want
And
that
they don't,
beautiful-
but they're not
beautiful
understanding
view.
the woes of the industry at the moment. They're not understanding that those vines are beautiful to look at, but they're expensive to maintain. And unless you're doing it in a viable business plan,
So if I can say, I call them the 3 vocabulary words that people have to understand what our business is. We have a vineyard, which is where the grapes grow, and that's the majority of our properties covered in vineyard, right? Hundreds of acres are covered just to sustain our tasting room, right? Which is the smallest size structure we own, is the tasting room where people visit. And then we have a winery, the third word, right? The winery is where we create the wine. The winery and the vineyard actually don't encroach on people's rights or don't bother anybody, right? Unless somebody doesn't like hearing the tractor go up and down the rows when we're doing, farm work, right? The tasting room is always the problem, right? Because we're bringing people out. Visitors are coming to the tasting room. We have a parking lot. If you're adjacent to a house, maybe you got music playing because you have somebody, playing music for the weekend. A wedding. There are wineries doing weddings. So these are our problems. So I'm always in favor of mitigating problems, right? So sit around, figure out, how do we address the tasting room part, right? How do you mitigate those problems? But I don't think most people understand that for that tiny tasting room, we need hundreds of acres to sustain our families, right?
Yeah.
So, and then we also grow the least amount of crop on the most amount of acres.
right?
So in between every row, whether it's 8 feet or 9 feet between a row, is nothing. It's wasted land.
Right. That you still
Pound-
have to mow.
Right, pound per acre, we get the least amount of crop for what we grow on compared to any other product.
But we also
So-
need the facility to take it to the next level, which is the aging process, the bottling process, and that's where we get
But
the
that doesn't bother people, right? So we'll have a barn for aging our barrels. We'll have a tank room for producing and aging some of those products and making. That doesn't bother anybody. But the average person out here on the North Fork doesn't understand the dynamics that in order to have that tiny tasting room, you need the land. We're actually saving a lot of land from development.
That small piece is maintaining the vast that everybody loves, and that is the character of the North
Right.
Fork.
Unfortunately, tasting rooms get a bad rap because, it is traffic and it's, visitors and whatever. But what's the alternative? I always say, I'm great. Let's mitigate, right? But what's the alternative? If we don't have part-time traffic because of visitors, then we have full-time traffic because we have full-time residents.
Right.
Once you build on everything, And I came from Western Suffolk. I saw Huntington go from farmland to complete residential. There's nothing left. I watched the last crop in Western Suffolk was actually sod, because the sod farmers were still making money, because every time a development went up, the sod didn't have to travel. They would sell them the sod, you know? But then you can see those same sod companies are out here now. And they're actually moving as well. You see them going up into New England.
They're in Maine too, yeah.
Well, they're up there because the property's less expensive. So they're moving out of where we are. And the reason they're moving out is land value's going up. And that's not, I mean, it's good for us. We live here, our land value's up. But if the land value's going up, that means the farmer's thinking about selling
Correct.
to
That's
the
their
developer,
retirement plan,
right?
Right.
The
Why
last
sell my
crop-
development? The last crop is a foundation. We know that, right? So, yeah, a lot
Sadly.
of stuff to consider, right?
And there are a lot of development rights intact farms still out there.
Oh, absolutely.
Fortunately, people are still farming them, right? Let's not give these people the excuse to put the foundations in the ground. Let's let them farm. Let's evolve to keep the character of the North Fork. That's the whole purpose of this. That's why I'd like everyone to come on and express what they need to survive, to give everyone on the North Fork what they moved out here for, right? Tourism. I'm against tourism. Oddly, I live here. I don't want to wait 90 seconds to make a left-hand turn, right?
Don't make left turns. Just
Don't make
right
left, right? Just
make right
three
turns.
rights is a
Come
left.
on, it's a simple-
Three
it's a
rights is
simple
a left,
form, yeah.
right? Come on.
3 rights is a left.
3 rights is a left. But okay, so I have. It doesn't help you guys because you need the people at your tasting rooms, right?
We don't exist without it.
We also have small businesses that are struggling too, and they need people out here. So I propose if everyone were to get off their phones and their computers and online shopping, and they purchased every purchase they make in town, we don't need tourism to sustain the small businesses because I believe there'd be enough people out here to do so. However, the farmers still need it. You still need the bodies. You still need the people in your
I'm not
tasting.
sure I agree, because a lot of the local businesses do rely on tourism.
They do. Yeah. Well, I'm throwing it out there just to say if every one of us would do a complete full stop online shopping
Oh, stop the
and
online
just
shopping.
stop the
buy
online shopping
local.
and just put
Yeah.
your ass in town every day and go buy in town. We
Buy
don't
local.
need bring people out here.
Yeah,
right?
Greenport put a bunch of little stores now that, it used to be mostly eateries, but now there's a lot of stores to go shopping, and it's fun. I mean, I happen to live there, and it's great. My kids can walk around and go shopping, but it's, so you still got to go to Tanger sometimes to get stuff. But, obviously, there is some clothing, and there is some in Mattatuck, and it's important that, like you said, is that people buy local. You're here, buy something here, support something here, so we can preserve what is here.
When we looked at our business model, Bob Entenman, which used to own Martha Clara at the time, there was a guy that worked for him. It was Bob. That's Bob's name.
Bob Kern.
Bob Kern.
Bob Kern.
Bob Kern.
Absolutely.
Bob Kern literally came into my business. He says, "Ron, you want to be successful? Rip out those vineyards and put a parking lot in." I looked at him. I said, "Why would I do that?" And he goes, "Because that means people are stopping at your place." And from that moment that I did that, my business took off.
Wow.
Because it was
You had
70.
the room.
It was 70 cars for people to stop.
You
And
had the room,
I think that's part of the problem out here on the North Fork is parking.
right?
Parking. I mean,
Oh, God, there's no parking in Greenport whatsoever.
Yeah.
but you take that parking lot behind Greenport there,
Right,
and you go up, you
Right.
have no parking problem.
right.
You go right behind Love Lane, put a parking lot up, you have no parking problems.
But we can't have that, right? No, but we should.
No, the funny thing is when
We could
built-
do it nice. You could do
Right.
sorry to cut you off, but we could do it where maybe there's a building, like a nice, it almost looks like
Yeah,
a
it's
barn.
all doable. You got to
It could
design
look like a
it.
barn aesthetically on the outside,
Yeah.
but the inside could operate as the garage. There's a way to make it look part of the.
You wouldn't even
Yes,
notice
yeah,
it.
you wouldn't
Yeah,
even notice
you wouldn't
it.
even
You wouldn't even know
notice
it's
it.
there.
Yeah, so I went through the whole planning process for my new building, and it's ironic because we had plenty of space, and I could have had a lot of parking spaces, but I remember these discussions about restricting the number of parking spaces. I said, don't we want to take the cars off the road and put them somewhere?
Well,
But my occupancy was designed to be, X number of people, but I can't park that many cars to have that many people.
Right, right.
Where's the thinking? Like, it's really strange, like dynamic, even in government. Like, how does that work? You know, like.
What did Ronald
we
Reagan
doing?
say? I don't know how many number of words it is, but I'm from the government and I'm here to help is the worst thing that you want to hear, right?